Hey, welcome to News and Biblical Views. We're looking at quantum physics. This is on the Huntington Post. You can check that out. The Huntington Post reports that quantum physics just got a bit easier to understand as two oddities merge into one. Now, why do I think this is really cool stuff? Because, God is the one who created the world. And what scientists have been discovering for approximately the last 100 years is that the world is really weirder than we thought. It's not just based on Newtonian physics that things are, very standard, measurable. That's all true at the big level. But when we start getting down to the very small level, we're talking about atoms and subatomic particles like electrons and, of course, even smaller, that the world behaves very differently. And we can't quite decide if it's a wave or a particle or both. Just by observing something, it goes from being a wave, which is kind of an indeterminate, undefined reality, and then when we observe it, it actually collapses down into a particle. How weird is that? How can the observation of something actually have an impact on how it behaves? Well, nobody knows exactly why, but that's what happens. This has been repeated again and again and again, and experiment after experiment, showing that this is always what happens. Once again, nobody knows exactly why that happens, but we know that it does happen. So no one's about to claim that quantum physics is now easy to understand, but maybe it's not quite as devilishly complicated as we thought. According to Huntington Post, new research suggests that two of the quantum world's most mysterious features, the uncertainty principle and wave-particle duality, are simply two sides of a single coin. The connection between uncertainty and wave-particle duality comes out very naturally when you consider them as questions about what information you can gain about a system. Dr. Stephanie Werner, an associate professor at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands and one of the scientists behind the research, said in a written statement, "Our result highlights the power of thinking about physics from the perspective of information. Wave-particle duality is the idea that elementary particles can exhibit wave-like behavior, for example, as seen in the classic double-slit experiment. The uncertainty principle holds that it's impossible to know both position and momentum of a particle at the same time. The proposed unification of the two features may bring new advances to cryptography." Dr. Patrick Coles, a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Waterloo's Institute for Quantum Computing in Canada, and one of Werner's collaborators, told the Huffington Post, in an email. For example, he said, "It could point the way to provide perfectly secure online credit card transactions." In addition, the advance promises to make it easier for physics students to make sense of a field that is notoriously difficult to understand. Instead of having to learn two separate phenomena, Cole says, they can just learn the uncertainty principle and then deduce the competition between wave and particle behavior as a consequence of the uncertainty principle. Perhaps most significant is that the unification may change the way scientists see the physical world. As happened in the 19th century, scientists discovered that electricity and magnetism aren't distinct forces, but just different manifestations of a single force we now call electromagnetism. Although our work is not at that level of impact, our work does affect how physicists view the structure of quantum theory. Cole says in the email, "Most physicists believe that the quantum theory applies to every object around us, including ourselves. Even though it is weird to think of the particles inside of us sometimes behaving like waves, that is the strange truth." Cole says that the key to the new research was to use mathematics to translate the language of wave and particle behavior into the language of uncertainty. He offered the following analogy. When we came across literature on wave-particle duality, it was like trying to read hieroglyphics. The big breakthrough that we made was to discover a Rosetta Stone, or construct a Rosetta Stone, that allowed us to translate these hieroglyphics into our native tongue. It was especially fun because no one had ever translated these hieroglyphics before. So if you're familiar with the Rosetta Stone, that was a stone that was discovered in Egyptian hieroglyphics, in Greek, and in um, Demonic, which is an early form or a later form of Egyptian. So by knowing at least the Greek and some of the Demonic, then they could discover how to interpret the the hieroglyphics. So it was a huge moment when they actually did that. And so that allowed the discovery of the hieroglyphics. And so in the same way, they're now saying that they found a way to better understand, kind of put it in our own tongue, so to speak. So what do other physicists make of the research? Dr. Robert Speckins, a physicist on the faculty of the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics in Waterloo, Canada, called it a very nice result and significant, adding that the more we understand the connections between different quantum phenomena, the better our chances of making sense of the foundations of quantum theory. So again, check that out at huntingtonpost.com. As I see this as important is because we are understanding now that the world is really cool. All right, God is the one who created this, and as we begin to understand quantum physics, that things can exist as a wave, and then when we observe them, they actually collapse down into a particle in a particular place. If you haven't seen the double slit experiment, check that out. It'll blow your mind. And this has been observed again and again and again. So this gives us reason to think, wow, when Jesus was talking about faith, about your faith has made you well, about he himself could not do many miracles in Nazareth because of their unbelief, it tells us that maybe the miracles that Jesus did were not so much supernatural, but they were just Jesus, creator, understanding his own creation and just using it to the fullest. Again, it's not to belittle God, it's to say that God has created the world in such a way that there are unseen realities that we have not tapped into yet. I mean, think about that. Over 100 years ago, nobody could even imagine things like cell phones, wireless, etc. And then we discovered, oh my goodness, it is possible to pass a signal through the air. This was made possible much by the work of Nikola Tesla, but actually passing signals through the air. Incredible. And yet it was always there. It wasn't science fiction. It wasn't supernatural. It wasn't a miracle. It just wasn't yet understood. And I think, of course, Jesus, being the one who created all, he understood it all. So he was able to work within these laws that he had created. So he never broke the law, or he never superseded a law or said, oh, forget that law, I can do whatever I want. I think he was just acting within the own realm of his own possibility of, this is how I made the universe. All these things are possible. That's why I said that nothing will be impossible for you if you believe, or all things are possible if you believe. All things are possible, like walking on water, right? So that's pretty amazing. And this is what I think quantum physics hold for us as believers. Stay in the Word, guys. Until next time, God bless.